A month ago, my computer got compromised by me clicking on what I thought was a document but was actually executable. Basically, a social engineering attack. And I realized my mistake within minutes and started changing all my passwords, but not before the hackers were able to hijack my YouTube account. Now with Google's help, I was able to get it back 6 hours later, but the experience wasn't fun. So with that computer compromised, I had to reinstall Windows, and I also started using two-factor authentication to prevent that sort of problem in the future. But even with two-factor authentication turned on with my phone, my main YouTube channel got hacked again 4 weeks later. I don't know how they got in this time. I suspect my old PC, which I hadn't reinstalled because it was off at the time of the last incident, but that one hadn't been reinstalled in 5 years, so who knows. But this time I already knew how to contact Google for a hijacked account, so I started that process right away. But it being a Saturday night, there was fewer people at work at Google, so it took much longer for them to respond, so it was actually 8 hours before I got the channel back, and that was at 3 a.m. in the morning, Sunday morning. So what do I do now? And how did the hackers get around my two-factor authentication? Well, the type of attack that's typically used for this sort of thing is called a session hijacking attack, where the hacker uses malicious code that it can somehow run on your computer to copy all of your browser session data and cookies and such, so that if you're logged in, they can basically just copy that, and then they're logged in on their computer and they have control over whatever you have control over. But then how were they able to bypass two-factor authentication to lock me out? Well, that turns out to be quite easy. They just turned off two-factor authentication, like this. My password is already filled in by my browser, so they just turn it off, which makes two-factor authentication really pointless. Now it seems pretty stupid that I should be able to turn it off without my phone, but well, what if I lost my phone? I still need to be able to get rid of it, right? So I guess it does make some sense. But you do need the password to turn off two-factor authentication, so how did the hackers get that? Well, that was my mistake, because I had Firefox store the passwords for me, so when they copied everything that was in Firefox, they got that too, so they had the password. But there's also a lot that Google could have done to prevent this. I mean, if somebody suddenly shows up from a different IP address with the same session, then turns off two-factor authentication, changes the password, adds all kinds of other security stuff, and then rebrands the channel, it's like, that might be a few red flags to notice something is amiss, if you're looking for that. And at that point, all they'd have to do is just suspend the channel for a day to see if the original owner contacts them. And something as simple as that would just make this whole hack unprofitable, because they would never be able to exploit what they just did. But what can I do on my end to make this sort of thing less likely to succeed? Well, not storing the passwords in Firefox is an obvious one, and using some kind of third-party password manager like LastPass or 1Password or Bitwarden would have probably helped a lot. But I'm not so sure about passing all my passwords to some third-party company that'll manage it for me, because my trust in that is not so high. So I decided that I was just gonna keep the passwords in an encrypted file on my computer like I've always been, but in addition to that, I actually shouldn't be opening that file very often, so I made this little card that's got my passwords on it that I keep by the computer so I can type them in, and I changed the passwords so that they're easier to type, so I don't mind having to type them in from time to time. And this card with my passwords on it, that's actually not my actual passwords, and the one that I do keep, which I may take with me when I travel, it doesn't say what the passwords are for, and it's actually not the actual password, but a slight permutation on the password. So if somebody finds this card, it's not going to be of much use to them. Now I'll still let my browser remember the login session, because I don't want to have to log in all the time. So a hijacker could still steal the session, but without the password, they won't be able to change the password or change the authentication methods. And once I spot something is happening, I'll be able to boot them out by just changing the password. At least that's the theory. But I do wonder about these password managers. I'm sure the people who make them make sure they're as hard to hack as possible. But if a hacker can run malicious code on your computer, they can do pretty much anything that you can do on your computer, which means they could potentially hijack your password manager. And at that point, they have the passwords in your password manager and you don't. And that's a scary thought. But if a hacker is able to run malicious code on your computer and you don't know it, they could potentially keylog and watch what you do to get into various sites, which means they could still get in because they could just watch you do it. So then, well, what if I use one of those USB encryption keys that plug into my computer? They wouldn't have that piece. But if they can control your computer, they could just log in on your computer and basically use the security key to take care of things like getting rid of the security key. So you're still screwed if they can control your computer. In the meantime, I have a credit card with just a 16-digit code on there, and at most 12 of those digits are unique to me, plus a 3-digit code on the back and an expiration date. I mean, and that's used for financial transaction? I mean, that's security-wise completely unworkable, right? Okay, fraud is a problem, but somehow the banks manage to keep it to a manageable level, and they do that by carefully examining all the transactions and looking for suspicious patterns. But that approach, I think, requires real eyeballs looking at things so that you don't have false alarms disabling things all the time. And of course, that costs money, and for social media companies, that's just too much right now. But I think in tech, we get lulled into a false sense of security by having long, unguessable passwords and 256-bit encryption that is infeasible to crack. But what's the use of having a super secure front door lock if the thief can just get into your house in a different way? And that's what's happening. Okay, now, if you're still watching this on my second channel, chances are you're subscribed to my main channel as well. So do check if you're still subscribed on that one, because if by any chance on January 29th or February 24th, you unsubscribed from some crypto scam channel, well, that would have been my channel while it was hijacked. And I lost about 10,000 subscribers that way, which compared to the 1.7 million subscribers I have, doesn't seem like much. But the thing is, most of those 1.7 million subscribers never look at any of my videos. I typically only get about 100,000 views from subscribers on a new video. And those 10,000 people that unsubscribed, those are actually people that watched your subscription feed. Otherwise, they wouldn't have unsubscribed when they saw the scam video. So having lost 10,000 subs is more substantial hit than it seems that way. So do go check if you're subscribed to the main channel, because if you're an active subscriber like that, you may be subscribed to this channel as well, and maybe watch this video to the end, which means there's a good chance that you're one of those people that unsubscribed from my main channel not knowing that it was my channel rebranded by some crypto scammer. So I hope this way I'll get some of the subscribers back, but of course most people don't watch videos to the end, but oh well. So this is the old 2012 PC that I was using casually while the second attack happened. So this one is suspect, and I've just reinstalled Windows on it, which is kind of tricky because being so old, it can't boot off of USB, and the install media no longer fits on a DVD. So I actually had to put the installer on a separate hard drive and then install it off of one hard drive onto another. But at the same time, I also bought this refurbished PC, which is 2017 vintage. Cost $300 Canadian. That's 1/5 the cost of my fancy new PC I bought in 2020. And it's about 3/4 the speed of that one, so not a bad deal. So that makes me question the whole idea of buying a new PC, because this one was so much better of a deal.